The Ohio State season is officially underway. Even better, the Boren Blitz is back on the podcast. It's going to be the Monday Podcast Daily. So now we have our Monday morning fullback / linebacker, and we have a game to talk about. I'm excited. Ohio State won 52-6 on Saturday. Zach, are you excited?
We're back, baby. I love it. This is Austin. Seeing your face means football season's back in full swing.
Oh,
and it
no.
could not be better.
That's a rough look for you. I'm sorry you have to deal with that. But, we were talking and texting on Saturday. It was great to be back in the Horseshoe. It was great to see the Buckeyes. Probably not maybe the first half that we were anticipating, but you've been through this. Openers aren't supposed to be perfect, and that wasn't for Ohio State. But I think in the end, Ryan Day probably still got what he wanted out of Saturday against Akron.
We talked about it last week on our pregame show leading up to the game. It's the first game of the season. Everyone was expecting perfection, firing on all cylinders. I touched on it. Mike Bennett touched on it. You did as well. Nothing's going to be perfect going into the first game. Doesn't matter what it is. Things are going to be off schedule. There's going to be some probably sloppy penalties with alignments, things like that. Just happens. It's your first time in 200 days, probably 200 something days that you can't do a redo, right? You're on a play clock. Everything feels more rushed. Like, you're going to have those things. What I do love is that this team responded. Early on, it almost seemed like, let's be honest, this team knows the hype behind them. They know what's been said about them in the media. Every time the ball was snapped in the first half, it's almost like they expected something big to happen, and it didn't. And they started saying, what's going on? But guess what? It's football. You're not going to have massive plays every single play. And I think they regrouped at halftime, came out, said, hey, we got to get back to playing football. The big plays will happen. And then you saw the Buckeyes really take over on both sides of the ball.
So when we have to go 9 months without a game to talk about, Zach, and then they go out, we have a million things that we got to get to. And we're not going to be able to do it all in one episode of the Boren Blitz, but where should we begin? Because you've got quarterback situation. You've got Jeremiah Smith's debut. Defense doesn't allow a touchdown. They score 2 of them. We spent all this time in the offseason saying, hey, can they get more takeaways? And they get 3, and they convert 2 of them into scores. What do you think was the most important thing that happened on Saturday?
There were so many positives, and I know all of Buckeye Nation doesn't think that, but the way Will Howard came out and kind of ran that offense, you could see how much more comfortable he was compared to even the spring game when it was the last national audience had seen him. He had full control. I loved what he did athletically. All of his throws were on target. I thought they were on time, proper reads, took care of the football. You talk about the defense, and we talked about it last week. They had more points than the opposing offense. That's pretty damn good, right? If you ask me. So there were so many things. The takeaways. It could go on and on and on. Jeremiah Smith. The hype train is real. The second play of the game could have went for 80-yard touchdown or whatever it was. So
yeah.
There were so many positives. It's hard to pinpoint one thing. I just think as an Ohio State fan, as an Ohio State coach, you have to be happy that this team came out. Maybe things didn't go as smooth as they could have in the first half. They kept on firing at them, and next you walk away 52-6.
What I really loved, Zach, was the way that Will Howard managed the pocket. How he did in the huddle, the command of that stuff. I'm not on the field. I don't know that. Whenever the play starts, though, and if some of the protection broke down, the way he handled his footwork, the way he could step up into the pocket, elude pressure, shake off a tackler, extend some plays. I was really impressed by that. We know what he can do in design run stuff. He didn't have to do it a ton against Akron. There were, I think, 3 maybe examples of that, and they all went for positive gains, including the little tush-push action. But I thought that it was the stuff where it was, sliding in the pocket, not getting panicked. He found, Jeremiah Smith a couple times on that first scoring drive where he had to maybe manufacture some stuff and extend the play with his feet. I thought that was the stuff that I wanted to see from Will Howard. The accuracy. Is he going to be the most accurate passer in college football this year? Probably not. I don't think he's going to need to be with some of these weapons, but that's what makes his ability to extend plays and not feel pressure when pressured in the pocket. That's probably going to help set him apart.
You hit the nail on the head. I'm going to take it a step further too. I would say in game one, the way that he controlled the offense, and what I mean is bringing guys into a huddle. You saw them huddle a couple times. You saw him be able to make checks at the line of scrimmage. You saw him put guys in place when guys looked a little confused or the formation looked off. Like the way he put guys in motion. There were so many things that he did that were on time, that looked like a veteran quarterback that someone had been in this offense for multiple years. And so when the ball was snapped, to your point, didn't have happy feet. He seemed controlled. He worked through his progressions. He did all of the things that he was supposed to do, used his feet when he needed to, which I think all of us Buckeye fans are super excited about because we haven't seen that the past couple of years. And so just it wasn't perfect, like you said. You look at the stat line, I think he ended up, 65%, something like that. It's not going to be, to your point, the most accurate, but you want to know something? He did take one shot down the field, completed to Jeremiah Smith. That's the only deep ball we saw thrown all game. I don't know what else people can ask for. Everyone doubted his arm. People doubted him being able to put the ball in the right position. Completely different quarterback from what we saw in spring ball to what we saw on Saturday.
Yeah, and to your point, Zach, you're going to be able to see more. This was just week one. They're gonna dial up more design runs for him as the season goes on and the competition level gets better. And they're gonna go through games where they take more than one shot downfield to Jeremiah Smith, or they don't take an entire half to get to that part of the call sheet. Like, there's so much more to go. So to think that Ohio State is a finished product on offense after week one, like that's not the right way to evaluate Ohio State.
No, and here's the other thing is if Ohio State really wanted to take shots down the field, they would have done it all day long. The thing is, Chip Kelly knew Ohio State struggled in the run game last year. He kept on going back to the run. You heard Ryan Day talk about it after the game. Chip kept on going back to running the football because that's what he wanted to do. Ohio State was playing against an 8-man box most of the day. Like, I don't think people realize that. Akron was playing a lot of man coverage and saying, okay, throw it up. Like, Ohio State, let's see you run the football. And Ohio State wasn't getting away from that game plan because they want to establish the run. They want to establish that physical culture of this offense, and that's what you saw them do. If Ohio State really wanted to take shots, they could have thrown it up all day long, and it could have been, sitting there playing college football, right, on the video game. And they didn't do that, but that's the thing. Like, Ohio State was still able to do what they needed to do, look like a very successful offense, to your point. Really no quarterback runs, really no deep shots, really no crossing patterns. Like, that offensive game plan was about as vanilla as you can get. That's like week 2 install stuff in spring ball. And that's what they used to beat Akron.
They also did use Jeremiah Smith to beat Akron. And for a freshman debut, you can't ask for much more. 2 touchdowns from Jeremiah Smith. The fade ball early on to get the Buckeyes rolling. That's what you wanted to see. We've seen some practices. Spring camp was great. Didn't do a ton in the spring game, but you've been out to the Woody. I've been out to the Woody. He was doing that in every single practice. But to take that to the game, that's a little bit different. Now it's one of those like hello world moments. Like, there's no turning back now.
The hype was real in Israel, Israel, and he lived up to it. The way he's able to go up for the football, the swagger he plays with, the way that he's able to use his body, and you saw it on the fade, where on the touchdown, you saw it on the deep ball that he caught down at the 2-yard line. You don't see many freshmen being able to do that, and that's understanding leverage. That's understanding basically the way to use your body against Division I athletes. I mean, yeah, it's Akron, but still, I mean, some of those plays he's making are ones that Garrett Wilson's was making. Those are ones that Marv was making. Like, there's not many guys, though, that make it look that easy. And that's what he did. And that's the scary part. You were there. I was there. I don't know what it looked like on TV, but from the standpoint of being there in person, the dude is fluid. For being a 6'4", 215-pound wide receiver, the dude is fast. The dude can move his body in there. The sky's the limit. I hate to keep on hyping him up. And, we talked about that last week. But what are you supposed to do when a dude goes out and puts up almost 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in his first game?
I almost like I don't know the right way to put it. I almost appreciate the fact that Jeremiah Smith did remind people that he was human by dropping that screen. He had the 2 penalties. Like the rest, the game seems to come easily to him, but that still doesn't mean, as you mentioned, Zach, that he is a finished product at this point. There's still a lot that he's going to be able to learn and add to this. So that also gives you a level of appreciation for the fact that he did those other things, like catching a ball in traffic for a touchdown, adjusting to the fade route for a touchdown, the deep ball. I think it was a little bit of a scramble drill working with Will Howard on that third and 4, maybe on the second drive of the game. Like he's doing things that are next level while still with room to get even better. That's got to be the scary part. And like Ohio State, they didn't pull him out of the game after the drop or the penalty or lining up wrong, like because they know how good he's going to be, and they just let him work through those issues. And the fact that those are the kind of growing pains, like that's insane to think about what he can become when those are out of the way.
Well, that's what you're going to have in a game like this. And that's why they kept on leaving him out there. And that's why we knew going into it, it wasn't going to be a perfect game. Think about it. You have a brand new quarterback who we already talked about, thought managed the game well, but still going into the game, brand new quarterback. Jeremiah Smith, who we knew was starting, freshman wide receiver. Cardinal Tate really for the first time being a true number 2 wide receiver on the team. You had 3 offensive linemen start their first games at Ohio State. Seth didn't, right? But you had 2 other guys, Integra and Austin, who were starting their first games ever. Seth, their first time at Ohio State. So it's like you have all these new guys on offense, and you knew it wasn't going to be a perfect, crisp looking operation. But they just kept on going at it, right? They kept on running the football. They kept on going to Jeremiah Smith no matter what. Will Howard kept on making plays even when passes were dropped or little silly penalties were happening. Like that's what I love about the performance on Saturday. So many people are going to say, "Oh, well, the first half sucked, and they need to look better, this and that." I'm actually ecstatic with how it went because, to your point, if you almost have perfection, it's like something doesn't seem right. Like. This is a team that's human, even though it might be the super team that everyone's calling it of the college football that they've ever seen. The team is human. It's 18 to 22-year-old young men that still have to go out and execute when the whistle's being blown.
So we'll get it more in depth with the Silver Bullets when Buckeye Q also returns this week. But what did you think of game number 1 there, Zach?
Loved what the defense did. Absolutely loved it. And I still think there is so much more growth on this defense. They've been going toe-to-toe with the Ohio State offense for spring ball, fall camp, right? They've seen a lot of what Ohio State does. And they faced an Akron operation on Saturday that, I'm going to be honest, I was actually super I want to call it proud, but their game plan with the way the misdirections, the fakes, the RPOs straight out to the flats, like it's stuff that's tough to defend. And the way Ohio State was able to make plays when they were needed to be made, keep them out of the end zone. I mean, both kicks that Akron made, I think they were career longs for that kicker, right? It was like 48 and 51, whatever it was. I was happy. They were flying around to the football. There were some missed tackles. You're going to have that in week 1. You got to clean that up. But really no blown assignments, guys flying around, having fun, playing loose. Lathan Ransom, my God, man, he was playing unbelievably. And I also think that that has to do a lot with knowing, hey, I got Caleb Downs next to me. And then here's another big thing that no one's realizing. The defense played that way, kept Akron under 200 total yards, and they didn't have their leader in Cody Simon, right? And when I say leader, of the guy that was during training camp calling the defense, right? That's the guy with the micro or the headset, helmet. And they were able to do that with Sonny calling the defense, with Arvell calling the defense. I thought they played really well.
We spent all offseason talking about the linebackers and how there was so much potential there, but it was all going to be built around the veteran leadership of Cody Simon. He gets the block go. He's a captain. He's got that headset that you mentioned. And all right, how is Sonny going to transition from safety to Will? and they wanted him to, play linebacker and learn those responsibilities. And then in game number 1, he's got to go play Mike and take, the lightning bolt headset and make the calls. Like, I don't think he played a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but he wasn't that far off. And I don't know what that might mean for him once he gets to actually play Will in the spot that he'd been spending the previous 8 months learning.
Think about what you just said, right? This is a dude that played safety all last year, didn't play linebacker, learned linebacker all this offseason, was playing the Will linebacker, was like, man, okay, here we go, fighting for a position, relying on, Cody Simon to kind of be his wingman. First game you go out, like, hey, dude, you got to wear the headset. You're calling the defense. You got to be the Mike linebacker. I know you're used to playing Will, but get in there and get everyone on the same page. For him to be able to do that, it's huge, right? I mean, that shows you what kind of guy he is. I think that also shows you how good this defense can be, because if you switch out the Mike linebacker and 90% of these defenses across the country and expect someone to go in there and get everyone on the same page and do those things, especially in game 1, probably wouldn't have been as smooth of an operation as it was.
All right. If you have one thing that you saw on Saturday that you are, maybe concern is too strong of a word, something that you want to see improved from Akron to Western Michigan when you left the Horseshoe on Saturday, what was it?
Oh man. There were probably 2 things that I want to see a little bit better. And one of them was, thought the O-line played well, but I thought there were times they were inconsistent. There were times where they didn't get as big of a push as I wanted them to or thought that they could. But then again, Donovan Jackson isn't playing, right. It's a complete shuffle of the offensive line to start. That's something where they need to improve. The other thing is, I would say is, and we touched on this briefly, I thought Sonny played really well. And I thought Arvell Reese played amazing. But I thought there was some inconsistency in the linebacker play, especially with filling gaps. There were some, I don't even know, it seemed like early on in the game, 3, 4, 5 of like 3rd and 3s or less. And it seemed like the linebackers were just a half a step too slow of filling the gap. And instead of making the play at the line of scrimmage, they're making it, 2 yards on their side of the ball. And then by the time they bring down the runner, he barely gets a first down. So some of those small things, by having Cody Simon back, that's going to help. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, man, you can't really be too picky on anything, outside of that. Going into Western Michigan, I'd love to see Chip open it up and let Will throw some balls down the field, right? Let's throw the ball down. Let's throw the ball down the field to open up the run game a little bit.
Yeah, I think they've got the weapons that they can maybe do that. All right, so I think I know who the Boren Blitz Buckeye Leaves are going to go to, but I'll not steal your thunder. Who you got?
Number 3 is Lathan Ransom. I thought he flew around all day long. I believe, looking at the stat sheet, he was the 2nd leading tackler on the day. Scoop and score for a touchdown. He just seemed like a different player, and everyone thought like, hey, Lathan Ransom is a dude, and he has been the past couple of years. But the way that he played on Saturday, I think Caleb Downs has a lot to do with that. Like I mentioned, unbelievable the way he was. My second Buckeye Leaf goes out to Will Howard. Coming into the Horseshoe, being the quarterback at Ohio State is tough enough. Coming in here as a guy that a lot of the country has doubted and said, oh, you were going to be the backup at Kansas State. Now you expect him to come to Ohio State and be the dude. Thought he handled that great. There is the sky's the limit for him in this offense. Right. From that standpoint. And number 1's got to be Jeremiah Smith, right? The hype train could not be any bigger for Jeremiah Smith. And yes, he had 2 penalties and a drop like we talked about, but still almost putting up 100 yards, having 2 touchdowns. It almost seemed like in the middle part of that game where things maybe and started getting tight. And I don't even say tight from a game standpoint, tight as in like people were getting tense. Buckeye coaches, Buckeye players, Buckeye fans were like, something needs to happen. Will Howard just kept on going to 4. That's what he kept on doing, right? And I know Emeka's amazing, Cardinell's amazing. I love those guys to death. But there's something for the quarterback to say, okay, we need to get something going. And where's the ball going? To number 4. And I think that says a lot about him. I think that says a lot about what his teammates think about him. But, man, for him to have a first game like that, he's got to be the number one Buckeye Leaf award winner.
Love it. Game number 1 in the books. Boren Blitz number 1 of the season is in the books. It's great to be back listening to Zach Boren. Again, we're going to do these on Monday mornings for the podcast daily this season. A little bit of a change from a year ago. We're still going to be talking about it on Sunday, spoiler alert, but that's when it'll be in your feeds and up on YouTube, because Bill and Doug will have their show. That's moving to Sundays. So a little bit of a reshuffling of the deck there, but we're still going to have Zach with you to break it down after these games. And we're going to have Buckeye Q during the week. And we also had him at weekend kickoff on Thursday night. So it is awesome to have his insight back with us on the podcast. I'm excited for a lot more games to come after 52-6 over Akron was put in the books on Saturday. So that's the plan. That's week 1. That's the show. He's Zach Boren. I'm Austin Ward. Thanks for joining us on the podcast daily for some Boren Blitz. We'll talk to you later.